Yo, what is up guys, and welcome back to a brand new F1 24 video. Today we're gonna be doing an ERS tutorial. For the people who don't know what ERS is, it's the energy recovery system in a Formula 1 car that gives you an extra 160 horsepower. At least I think it's 160. It used to be 160, it might be more now actually. But they've changed a lot on F1 24 with the energy recovery system. As you can see, we've gone kind of back to the old days of like F1 2018, 2019, where you can change the modes of the ERS deployment. Now in real life, they've got around 14 modes. I think they're called state of charge. It's still quite simplified, but in real life, of course, there are a lot of engineers working on Formula 1 car. But on the F1 game, we got the non-ERS deployment, medium, hot lap, and overtake. As you can imagine, none is the least, then medium, hot lap, and then overtake is the most, which gives you a lot of power, but drains the battery incredibly fast. So of course, you're gonna have to balance it out and see what the fastest is on F1 24. And I'm gonna help you guys. In the bottom right, we've got the yellow bar, which is how much battery you've left.
What the f*** was he doing?
Hey! 5 plays critical. Okay. Back to our... Oh. There's no... Okay. Calm down. On the bottom right, we got the yellow bar, which is how much battery you have left. Which is a bit of an unnecessary bar, because you can see the percentage in the bottom, which is 100%, so the yellow bar is full. The green bar is for how much deployment you're allowed to use in a single lap, and it's the same for the recharge. Now, you cannot see the recharge bar at the moment, because we have not recharged at all so far in this lap, but it is the red bar in the bottom left, and you can see it's filling up now. Now there's a maximum you can recharge as well, so that is an important one as well, and I'm gonna explain to you why. It didn't used to be important on the past F1 games, but on this F1 game, recharging the battery is much faster, much more like real life. In F1 23, for example, it took you sometimes over 10 laps to recharge the battery to 100% after it emptied out. And that obviously was an issue, because in a race you can only go, especially in competitive league racing and F1 esports, you could only go for a few attacks in a race, and that could decide your results. That's not a thing anymore though, because as I'm gonna show in a moment, I can show it right here. We're gonna drain our battery here a little bit, which you can see goes incredibly fast. Easy flat out through pull on. And we're just gonna keep the battery on until it's empty, and then in a second you're gonna see how fast it's gonna recharge. So we're coming into sector 3 now. We're just gonna wait a little bit. It's 10% now. We're gonna turn the ERS to none, and it's basically gonna recharge the whole battery in basically half a lap. You can see by the time you get to the bus stop, it's already back to 40%. It's a little bit slower now because we've reached the maximum amount of recharge in a lap. Now you might be wondering, why is it still recharging then? Basically when we're recharging, when we're just on non-mode, it's going through MGUH, and maybe there's not a limit on that. I don't know the exact regulations behind it. In a second, I'm gonna explain to you why it's so important, that red bar, on recharging your battery, and what you can do to always maximize performance from the red bar in the bottom left. Now, as you could just see in the last lap we did, we reached the full red bar really easily. Now, this all has to do with the engine brake. It's currently on 100%, the engine braking, which means, as the name says, it's recharging more, or it's braking more on the engine, which also means it's recharging the battery faster. Now, if we're gonna put this to 0 and we're gonna do a lap, you're gonna be able to see we're not gonna be able to recharge that red bar in the bottom to 100%. So we're just gonna drain here a little bit, and then we're gonna turn on the hot lap mode, and then we're gonna start our lap. 81% battery across the line, around 81%. Alright, and now as you can see, we're heading towards the end of the lap. The red bar has not even filled up for half, and and we're gonna be down to around 30% battery coming across the line, which means we use 50% battery, almost 50% battery. We're at 34%, whereas we started with 81. Now, you might be thinking this is not a big issue in qualifying, but it is. Even though it might not be a big issue on Spa, for example, there are going to be tracks where if you use your full allowance of ERS in a lap, you are going to dip below 10% battery because the battery is not recharged enough, or you're draining more than you're recharging, basically. So you're going to be at a loss of power towards the end of the lap, even though you still are allowed to use more battery in that qualifying lap. And then obviously in the race, you're gonna have so much less ERS compared to a person that is using 100% engine brake. Now, I'm sorry if this all sounds a little bit complicated, but what you need to get from this is that you always want to use a high enough engine brake to fill up that red bar in any lap, so that you have the most ERS to play with and you have the most power available in a qualifying lap. Now, some people might have already know this from my league racing videos, but the wing level you use has a massive influence on your battery usage and on your battery recharging. Because if you get from point A to point B faster, you're obviously gonna have used less energy. Not to mention the fact, if your braking zone lengthens, you're gonna have more recharging. Now that is not as much of an issue anymore on F124 because you're gonna be hitting that maximum recharge over a lap. But to also add on to the fact that lower wings uses less ERS is because you're less long flat out. You are braking earlier, you get from point A, which is the exit, to the braking point faster. But also, let's say the Lecombe section, the start of Sector 2 on Spa, you're going to be running slower and you're going to be less throttle throughout the whole section. It means you're going to be using less of your battery throughout the lap. Another small part that has a slight influence on the ERS, not major, but slight, is the weight of your car. At the start of a race, you can have slightly more ERS recharging than at the end. Again, because your braking zone is longer. But it is only slightly though, because obviously your car takes longer to get from point A to point B. I haven't actually tried myself on F124 if that's the case, but it was the case on F123, as I just poked myself in the eye. And then of course, as many people know from league racing, DRS has a huge effect on the ERS recharging as well on the past games. On this game, you can just turn the ERS off and recharge really fast, but it's still easier to recharge in DRS because you lose less time recharging as you have less drag. So, on to another part of the ERS tutorial. And that is, what is the most efficient way to do your qualifying lap? Now we're running at 100% engine brake again as well. You're going to be able to see how fast that red bar is going to fill up over a qualifying lap relative to that 0% engine brake. But that is not what this part of the video is about. This part of the video is about how to do as fast of a qualifying lap as possible while maximizing your ERS. And that is basically using your overtake button until the start-finish line and then turning it back to hot lap before you reach the end of the straight. Again, coming out of the corner, you want to be instantly on the overtake button because you carry that wall speed down the straight. Now that's not as much the case on Spa because you tend to bottom out a little bit through Eau Rouge. But yeah, it helps a lot. Getting early on that overtake mode out of long exits and then through here, we're just gonna keep it on hot lap. You can also put it to medium ERS mode, but yeah, throttle application might change a little bit and it might hurt your confidence a little bit, so I'm not a fan of doing that. Out of this corner again on the ERS and then turn it off as soon as you got any form of decent speed. Don't keep it on too long because you're gonna hit the maximum ERS allowance of a full lap. And as you can see, our green bar is quite far down already, even though we still got the last sector to do. And I reckon we will be fine actually. If we keep it in hot lap, it's going to be close actually. I've used quite a lot in the run up to turn 1. So we haven't done it in the most efficient way possible. But yeah, you just have to pick and choose. Use a little bit out of every single exit in order to maximize that qualifying pace. And then just keep it in hot lap, in my opinion. Just bind a button to the overtake mode. We're gonna turn it on again here. And then we're just gonna run out of ERS. You can see in the bottom left, deploy used. And that means you've used all your ERS for that lap allowed. However, on the next lap, you can just use that full battery again. But we don't have a lot left. Another important thing for qualifying is make sure that your battery is 100% before going into the final corner, because you just want always to have a full battery. Some tracks you tend to go below 10%, as I said early on in this video, in the end of qualifying. I've had it in career mode. Very important to not let it happen, and that's why you need that 100% battery starting your lap. And another thing, you could see me do this on the qualifying lap I just did, is use the overtake button until you start your lap, because that way that deploy you're using helps you gain lap time into your lap, but at the same time that doesn't count towards the deploy of that lap. It counts to the deploy of your out lap, so that's just free lap time. Now of course that's not the case on tracks where you tend to dip below 10% battery towards the end of the lap, even though you haven't hit your maximum deploy of a lap. Yeah, on a track like Spa, like where that is not an issue, that is very important. So again, try to do that on the tracks where it allows you, and yeah, that way you can gain free lap time. It is a free tent into turn 1. Now on to the next part, and that is how much lap time do we lose from not using the overtake button in a qualifying lap. And as you can see, we're just gonna start a lap here. We've got still 1.2 laps of fuel, that should be enough. But into turn 1, we're already at 10 down. So that's not ideal. We've got a little bit cold tires, but that's not ideal. 1.2 tenths on the exit. We had a slightly better exit and lost a bit due to the cold tires we have. And then up the hill we go. And as you can see, it stagnates a little bit on the hill. But there is still some loss. So yeah, big loss, 3 tenths. Let's say 2.5 tenths loss so far in this lap, purely on the overtake button that we have not used. We are slightly lighter now, but of course tire wear not helping. And then on this exit we use overtake button as well. 3.9 tenths it was. It's creeping up again. We didn't use a lot of overtake there. We used most of it out of turn 1, of course. And I think our exit was slightly better on this lap. So let's say half a tenth through there, which adds up to 3 tenths. And then here we just use hot lap. As you can see, I'm actually gaining a little bit of time. I think it might be because we're lighter on the car. And then on the final chicane exit, we use some more overtake. So we're about to find out how much we're gonna lose there. .5 tenths. And yeah, that's around another half tenth. So just by not using the overtake in a qualifying lap, you lose 3.5 tenths. But now, let's see how much lap time we lose by only using the medium deployment. And this is obviously just for kind of more race scenario, so you can see how much you lose relative to someone that's pushing like crazy. On medium, you're going to be recharging quite a bit throughout the lap. And as you can see, it's still using quite a bit on the exits. But this is actually something EA and Cody's have done well, which is mapping the ERS. Now, of course, we've already gained lost around 1.3 tenths into turn 1. And you can see how much it is on the exit of turn 1. We are going to be over half a second down by sector 2. Just gone. Make that actually 7 tenths by the end. Now, and to avoid people swapping ERS modes throughout the lap all the time, EA and Cody's have mapped medium ERS deployment in such a way that it kind of starts recharging again towards the end of the straight. And that is obviously ERS and time-wise the most efficient thing to do. You want as much ERS deployment out of an exit and as little possible towards the end of a straight. And you can see there, it stopped using the battery when we reached a certain speed. I think it's bound to the speed you're going. And yeah, again, I think we're going to be able to see it better here. Up to 7th gear. And now slowly it's going to use less. It's stuck on 88%, and then after that it starts recharging again. But if you go below the speed, you can see it stops recharging and starts using a little bit again. So yeah, that is the most efficient way, I think so, ERS and time-wise. But as you can see in the bottom left, we have not optimized ERS recharge. And on medium ERS deployment, we lost 1.3 seconds over that lap relative to using hot lap and overtake. So that's around 9.5 tenths to just the hot lap mode. So I think in the race, you want to balance those out between hot lap and medium, because I think on this track with hot lap, you are slightly losing ERS over the lap. Now on some tracks that's not the case. On some tracks on hot lap you're actually gaining ERS over lap. So yeah, then you're gonna have to balance it out more with hot lap and the overtake button. But around here you're gonna have to balance it out more with the hot lap and the medium deployment. But now let's see how much time we lose if we use no ERS at all in a full qualifying lap. Yeah, I think it's gonna be huge. I think we're gonna be losing around 3 seconds per lap. Because yeah, it's such a long lap. It has such long straights. If you don't use those 160 horsepower, you're obviously losing a lot of lap time over that lap. So we're just gonna keep it a none. And obviously then we're also not gonna recharge our battery. So this is very inefficient. We have no power. And we're not gaining any ERS back at the moment because we're already at 100%. And that's why you kind of never really want to be on 100% battery. So out of turn 1 we go. Non-ERS. We cannot see the delta now, but we know the lap times, of course. 41.4 was the kind of optimum lap time. It is not really fast though, driving-wise, of course, due to the fact I'm talking, explaining, and not massively focused on the driving. So take the numbers with a grain of salt. There could be like 1 or 2, maybe 3 tenths between those laps, but yeah, it's just trying to make the point that there's quite big differences in lap time with the ERS modes. So yeah, I actually didn't see the first sector split, but as you can see, the ERS recharge is staying on 0. It was a 42.7 for the medium ERS deployment, and it's a 44.1 for no ERS deployment, which means there's a 2.7 second difference between using no ERS and using the hot lap and overtake mode, so the ideal one. So yeah, make sure to use your ERS, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, that was my ERS tutorial for F124. I hope you guys learned something. I hope I didn't take too long explaining it. It is a lot of information to process, so make sure to wind back if you don't quite understand something. Make sure to ask questions in comments. I might answer them, or I will answer them actually. Because I love making tutorial videos. They usually don't do as well on the channel, but yeah, I just like teaching people about the F1 game and maybe a little bit about F1 as well. So make sure to like and subscribe for more tutorials on F124. Hope you guys enjoyed, hope you guys learned something, and see you guys next time. Ciao.